Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, preparing to haul some worms out of some systems that have been in the process of horizontal migration for 31 days. It's a couple of red wiggler bins. The bins are actually, well, they're over on the shelf. They're the two black systems up on the top shelf there. And I've built a new home for them. Right here behind the green information board is a nice big batch of prepared bedding. A little different from what I usually do, because in this case I did something which a lot of people have recommended over and over, but I always, for whatever reason, just sort of resist doing it. I think I've done it a few times in the past, but not recently, which was to actually inoculate the bedding. So I took the finished castings out of a couple of those. Well, maybe I just grabbed a couple spoonfuls out of one of them. It doesn't matter so much. The whole idea was to transport some of the active fungus and bacteria and microbes and everything that occupy a typical worm bin and get them working in here in advance of the worms being introduced to make things really cozy. But the system's been out, been out here just sort of priming and preparing for worm occupation for about a week now. And it was 10 days ago that we last came in here to check in on these little guys. The systems that we're going to be checking in on have also had a little bit of an issue with Springtails. The last check-in even focused a great deal on our little collection of Springtails that's continuing to grow. But this is very similar to the way you guys remember seeing it. I'm going to do something what I did in a couple other bins that I recently bought to an end, which is to just take the finished castings that are harvested from both systems, combine them into a single bin, and then work on creating a nice little bait station for the worms to be drawn into so they could be hauled out later, and then the batch castings can really be considered as harvestable. So I'm going to get to work on this, get a glove on, head over to the bench, so let's get started. So before we start tearing things down, it was before the last check-in that we would always come in here on a daily basis to see how the accumulation of Springtails was coming together, and then we actually created a time-lapse showing what was going on out here on these coffee filters on our feeding zone indicators. All the Springtails. Look at them all. Unbelievable. And the way I gathered this big collection of them over here was by simply removing not only the piece of newspaper that I've already taken off, which also has some Springtails on it, but obviously the place where they're all hanging out. And the one main thing that I think has been helping a lot here was not what we thought originally, because originally we were thinking if we were to sprinkle worm chow out onto that piece of paper, then they'd come for that. But even without the worm chow, they're coming for the moisture. So I would always also re-dampen this stuff and then cover it with plastic so that it can remain damp for a good long time. But what I've done over the past few days to accumulate this collection here was just to do exactly what you see here. Just lay all this stuff out, kind of uncovered and giving it time to dry. And then these little guys all just start circling around looking for any little piece of material to hang out on that's still damp. And then eventually all the moisture vanishes and then all the movement stops. And that's pretty much how I've been assembling this collection. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's what I've been doing here, and that's how this collection of Springtails has been coming together. But guess what? No matter how much we collect down in the system, there's just tons more down within the bedding, especially where the moisture's been preserved with the top covering plastic. But out here where there was only paper, here I would expect the material to have continued to dry and hopefully as a result continue to also become depopulated. That's kind of what we were after here by covering only a part of the system up with a little bit of plastic, so that that spot where we were also applying the few feedings is meant to bring the worms over. So I think there's just a clear section of each of these systems that's going to basically get hauled out with, with the worms, just the material and everything. In fact, that's part of the reason I even sort of distinguish between the food that created the horizontal migration feeding zone was 3 feedings worth out of the 24, so really the finished castings in the system would be the 21 days worth of, or the 24 days worth of material. So older system 315 days, younger system 280 days, 21, 24 feedings worth of castings being harvested. And I guess whatever castings become of the feeding zone section will just sort of go for the ride. And it looks like all these springtails are going for the ride too. I guess really it's just a matter of deciding where that point is, where you're going to actually haul all the material out, and then the rest of it would be material that is just stragglers, right? I mean, from here on, it seems by the time we get out to this edge, I see no worms in the material, which is kind of cool. And I think since we're going to be anticipating stragglers one way or another, we can easily just segment a portion of this off to the side that's going to have some worms in it that we're going to bait out later with that clear plastic tray. And then all the rest will just be what we're hauling out and relocating into their new home. And you might be wondering, hey, where's the second bin? These guys have been living in 2 systems for a long time now. You know, based on those numbers too, you saw on the board there's a few thousand worms here in these 2 systems. And that was actually the number that we estimated when these systems were launched originally. So, you know, where we stand today with the worm count in these systems is anybody's guess. Most likely more, though. But I'm kind of liking the idea of just putting all these little guys into a single system. It'll be a little bit crowded, perhaps. Perhaps as a result of that, we won't see so much breeding. Or maybe we will. I don't know. Not sure what their tolerance is for being crowded into a smaller space than they're used to. Although if you look at this, this is a smaller tub and it's not all that deep. But I'm thinking this is going to kind of be what we're hauling out here. Is there some more of this that we can just sort of... Here's a mango seed. Bring that with the worms. I guess here's a little bit more material that seems like it's kind of worm-free. Trying to think, what size container do I have that I could put this stuff into? In the past I've used a couple containers if I needed to, because maybe a single container just wasn't enough. Whatever, that doesn't matter. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much material I need to be able to hold and transport over. I guess we could even separate some of this to minimize the space requirement. Any old leftovers we can just pull out and gather up and bring with them. Look at all those springtails. So I guess if we're going to do that, might as well just do it and figure out how much of it we've got. I tell you, I wish there was just a way to kind of do away with the springtails. I'm used to not having them. I never had them in any of my systems, and then now it seems like I've got them everywhere and in great numbers too. I don't think that they're really bothering anybody, so they're not harming the worms as far as I can tell. At least I hope they're not, but there's just so many of them. Ugh. Well, whatever. Certainly not what I would consider ideal or perfect, but it is what it is. It would be nice to have less, that's for sure. Alright, let's make that same delineation here in the older system. Figure out what's going with the worms. Figure out what's going to stay and get baited. Seems like some of these cucumbers just didn't really, I don't know, sit well with the worms. They didn't seem too interested. Tomato looks like it was pretty popular though. Just a little thin piece of skin remaining. And then we got some bedding bits. This is kind of good because I built that bin with just bedding and inoculant and moisture, obviously, but no food. I mean, that's not 100% true. I did put some worm chow in there and a few gummy bears. There again, it was just meant to be kind of inoculant fuel, not so much pre-feeding the system. So yeah, here we've got, somehow the material just feels a little bit more compacted for some reason. I don't know why. Perhaps it's just got a higher degree of moisture content or something. I'm not sure. It feels a little bit more clumpy. Over here on the dry side, I believe, once again, we've got fairly depopulated material. I guess once all this stuff gets combined, I'll have to break up some of this damper stuff that seems to be clumping together and not wanting to break apart so much. But as soon as it gets blended with some of the drier stuff over here in this system, or even on this edge of the same bin, it should loosen up a little bit. So let's decide where we're cutting off our castings collection and leaving the rest as our haul out of worms. It's got to be somewhere around here, I assume. Let's just do the upturn approach, because then we get to see everything and we get to pick out all the food bits because they can't hide from us. Okay, some more stuff. This looks like just like a pumpkin stem that's going with them from their old environment to their new. A lot of times that just happens because pumpkin stems take a long time. And another mango seed, not surprising, and buddied up systems. They're being fed very similarly, so any sort of old, long, slow composting items we find in one system are likely also to be found in the other system. But it doesn't have to be like a perfectly clean extraction. I do like just the idea of getting the better portion of this stuff out of here, just so we can have sort of a worm release spectacle to check out. And all this stuff will just get planted down into the system before we release the worms. So let's go find ourselves a container that should be the right size to fit this much material. Let me see what I've got. I've got an idea though. For me, this cut off bottom of a bucket really comes in handy. It's got such nice capacity. And the top section of it is what I built my screener out of. So it's all still here. This is just a part of it that didn't end up turning into the screener that I use when I'm separating castings from stuff. So this is really a good chance for us to see how many worms we're collecting and releasing into our new system. And as always, I'm always curious to hear what people think in terms of their estimates of how many worms I'm starting a new system with. So today too, I'm going to be turning to you guys to please leave me a comment. Once we release these guys and we could see them all together, the worms from both systems, we'll all formulate a guesstimate. I'll put mine out there too to be calculated and averaged along with everyone else's to come up with our estimated worm population for our new bin. And that, I think, is always kind of a cool way to start off a new system, with input from all the viewers on what they believe they saw. Yikes, did I just drop a whole bunch of stuff? Alright. That was my only concern, was that I didn't want to drop a whole bunch of worms on the table. I could pick up the castings later. Let's just do this sort of unusual crossed arm approach to trying to get this haul out done. Now, what I'm bringing over from the older system, I believe it was the older system that we had a somewhat higher estimated worm count. This system was started with what was thought to be over 1,600 worms versus the other system was started with what we thought to be less than 1,000 worms. But once we allow each of those population sizes to go for, close to 300 days or more than 300 days, it's always fair to expect that the worms will have, look at them all. They will have been reproducing, increasing their numbers, hopefully. And wow, we're bringing a lot of stuff over here. Glad there's a little bit of room left in that new container, but I did pretty much build it up to the rim almost. So I think the whole thing of me combining all of this material into a single system and then baiting it is a little bit boring. I usually just save that for an off-screen activity, which I'll take care of at a later point in time. What I'm really more interested in is getting these little guys situated in their new home, and I'm definitely interested in hearing what you all think in terms of how many we're releasing into the new system. So let's get that new system out here and get these little guys released into their new home. All that remains now is getting our little guys introduced to their new home. So let's open up the new bin. You can see I already tapped into this thing to create our bait box. And I also tapped into our collection of old uneaten stuff to feed the bait box, although there's a couple chunks of this cucumber or zucchini or whatever going along for the ride. Pumpkin stem, the outer husk of a mango seed, some surplus bedding. We might as well, as long as it's here and handy, we might as well submerge it. I'm not even treating this as a feeding, and the system wasn't really fed either, other than stuff put in here to sort of feed the microbes. I sprinkled a little bit of worm chow into here, and there was also, I wonder if I can locate any of them. I did sort of position them deliberately so I'd be able to return to them. This, I believe, would be one of them. I put gummy bears in here, and I put them down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 positions. There was 2 in the middle position, but in every one of these corner positions or center positions there should be one. And I put it right where the castings had been placed in to inoculate the systems, so I figured bumping into it should be pretty easy. Although I did come in here, I think it was yesterday, to just add even more paper to really build this system out, kind of pack it up to the rim, and that's where it's at. Because I think once we kind of excavate a little bit of a hole to drop in all these leftovers and springtails, unfortunately, and a few little guys that kind of came in here before the introduction of the masses, they're getting a sneak preview, but there's not going to be a lot of gap between them being introduced. But don't forget to count them too, because now that the rest of the population is going in, this will be our last chance to see how many worms we're introducing to this system on its initial launch. So please don't forget to let me know what you think. Is there a lot of worms? Not that many worms? I don't know. I guess we're going to get one more chance to see them as they make themselves at home in their new bin. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody thinks in terms of how many worms we just released into here today. So let's spread this thing out a little bit across the entire top surface. A nice little layer of familiar material for the little guys to hang out in until they feel comfortable diving down into the fresh castings. So how many do we have here? Please leave a comment. I'm looking forward to seeing what you think. I got a few worms stuck to my glove. I have to get them off and into their new home as well. And I've got a few more over here too, which I'll take care of. I got some stuff to clean up and put away. But there's one last thing I wanted to do before we call it a day, and I think most of you probably know if you've been here before, which is christening the new bin with its worm bin sticker. Customary for me with red wigglers just to not label what kind of worm it is. So please join me in welcoming our newest bin here in the wormery. Brand new bin of red wigglers, 2 active systems worth of worms released into a single system. I think it's going to be a productive one, and we got more coming out of the bait station too. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And please don't forget to let me know how many worms you think we put in here. Please leave a comment. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.